We've gone through tons of articles and research just for you. We're going to make sure you sound like a total pro.
We'll give you the most important takeaways.
Yeah, get ready for some seriously interesting stuff. India's leading the world in remittances, for one.
And their banking sector is looking super healthy, 12-year high.
Crazy, huh?
It really shows how all these different parts of the economy connect, you know? They all tell a story about where a country's headed.
Totally. It's not just numbers on a page, it's people's lives.
Opportunities.
Challenges, the whole picture.
Yeah, exactly.
So first up, remittances.
Huge story.
India got a whopping $129 billion in remittances just this year. Can you believe it?
Top of the charts globally.
Top of the charts. So what's causing this surge?
Well, there are a few things at play. First off, the Indian diaspora. It's massive, millions of people working all over the world. And then you've got shifting migration patterns. More and more Indians are moving to places like the US, UK, Australia.
High-income countries.
Yeah, exactly. And that means higher wages, which translates to more money being sent back home.
Makes sense. So it's not just like doctors and IT specialists sending money, right?
Nope. It's coming from all sorts of sectors, skilled and unskilled labor, the whole spectrum.
Wow. So this money is impacting a huge cross-section of Indian society. What's the effect on individual families back home?
Well, think about it. Families can afford better health care, education,
Better housing?
maybe even start small businesses. It's a direct infusion of cash that really boosts living standards.
So it's a win-win, right?
Yeah.
Families benefit, and you mentioned earlier how this impacts the macro economy as well.
Totally. It bolsters their foreign exchange reserves, meaning they don't have to rely so much on borrowing from other countries. This influx of funds can even support big development projects.
It strengthens the whole economy, basically.
You got it.
So $129 billion flowing into India, improving people's lives, boosting the national economy. But are there any downsides to depending so much on these remittances?
That's a crucial point. As great as remittances are, relying too heavily on them creates vulnerability.
Right. What if something happens in those high-income countries?
Exactly, like an economic downturn. Suddenly, that flow of money could dry up, and that would hurt both individual families and the whole Indian economy.
That's a sobering thought.
It highlights the importance of diversifying income sources, you know?
And making sure the economy is strong on its own.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's move on to some other interesting developments in India's economy. Anything catch your eye in the also in the news section?
Oh, definitely. Get this, India might be on its way to becoming a banana superpower.
A what?
A banana superpower. Apparently, they've seen a 10-fold increase in banana exports over the past decade, and they're aiming for $1 billion in revenue from bananas in the next 5 years.
That's not something you hear every day.
Right.
What's driving this banana boom?
Well, India has the ideal conditions for growing bananas.
Yeah.
The climate, the soil, it's all perfect.
Wow, so it's all about location, location, location.
In a way, yeah. And they're not just focusing on one type of banana either. They're growing all sorts, like dwarf Cavendish, Robusta, Manthan, Poovan, and Nendrin.
So they're covering all their bases, huh?
Exactly, catering to all sorts of tastes around the world.
Very smart. So from bananas to something a bit more high-tech. What else is making headlines?
This one's pretty cool. An Indian firm just became the first private company in the country to get a vacuum arc remelting furnace up and running. VAR furnace, for short.
Okay, I have to admit, I don't know what a VAR furnace is.
It's basically a super high-powered purification system for metals.
Ah, okay.
It creates incredibly high-grade alloys, especially titanium alloys.
Titanium, the stuff they use in airplanes and medical implants.
That's the one. Strong, lightweight, doesn't corrode.
Right, super useful stuff.
And with this new furnace, India can make those top-quality titanium alloys themselves.
So this opens doors for them in lots of different industries.
Absolutely. Aerospace, medical technology, even renewable energy.
Wow, so it's not just about producing a metal, it's about the potential it unlocks.
Exactly. It shows how India's technological capabilities are growing.
And their ambition to compete on a global scale.
For sure.
Okay, so we've got bananas, titanium. What about agriculture in general?
Well, there's some good news there, too. It seems FCV tobacco farmers have seen their earnings double between 2019-20 and 2023-24.
Wow, that's fantastic.
It really shows how resilient India's agricultural sector can be.
Especially considering they're the second largest tobacco producer in the world.
Right. And this success wouldn't be possible without the Tobacco Board.
They play a big role, huh?
Oh, absolutely. They've been around since 1976, making sure the industry develops responsibly.
From production all the way to export.
Yeah. They guarantee quality, protect farmers, and look out for consumers, too.
So they're kind of like the guardians of the tobacco industry.
In a way, yeah. They're based in Andhra Pradesh, which is one of the main tobacco-producing regions, so they really understand the ins and outs.
Very interesting. But let's step back and look at the bigger economic picture again. I'm curious about those key financial indicators.
Oh, we've got some good news there, too. India's gross non-performing asset ratio, or GNPA for short, is at a 12-year low.
Okay, before we get too excited, remind me what that means again.
Sure. Basically, NPAs are loans that haven't been repaid on time.
Oh, right.
They're a big sign of how healthy a country's banking sector is. A lower GNPA means fewer bad loans, which means businesses and individuals are doing a better job of paying back their debts.
So this 12-year low is a really good sign.
It means the financial system is strong and stable.
That's great news.
And you know what's interesting? This positive trend in GNPA ratios could actually be connected to those remittances we were talking about earlier.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, remittances provide a regular income for a lot of families, right? So that improves their financial security, makes them more likely to repay their loans on time,
Makes sense.
fewer loan defaults, healthier banks. The whole system benefits.
It's like a chain reaction of good news.
Exactly. And a healthier banking sector can lend more money to businesses, which helps the economy grow even more.
So we've come full circle. It seems like those remittances, those individual acts of support, are having a huge ripple effect across the whole Indian economy.
It's amazing how everything's connected, isn't it?
It really is. We've covered so much already: remittances, bananas, titanium, the health of the banking sector.
And we're just getting started.
I know, there's so much more to explore. We'll be back after a quick break to delve even deeper into these trends.
And what they mean for India's economic future.
Stay tuned.
We've talked about all the positive stuff happening in the Indian economy.
Right, the remittances, the low GNPA ratio, all that.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. Sometimes even positive trends can hide, well, maybe not hide, but
Not tell the whole story.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. Just because the GNPA ratio is low doesn't mean everything's perfect, you know?
Right, some sectors could still be struggling.
Exactly. It's important to look deeper, see which industries are doing well and which ones are lagging behind.
Are there any specific areas we should be paying attention to? In terms of financial vulnerability, I mean,
Definitely. Agriculture, for example, it's always going to be a bit more vulnerable, right?
because of the weather.
Yeah, unpredictable weather,
Right.
changing prices for crops on the global market. It's tough.
So even with success stories like those FCV tobacco farmers, we need to keep an eye on the whole sector.
Absolutely. Make sure everyone's getting the support they need.
Okay, so maybe not everyone's benefiting equally from this economic growth.
It's something to keep in mind for sure.
Speaking of needing support, let's talk about education. What did that UDIs Plus report say?
Oh, the UDIs Plus report, always interesting. It's a bit of a mixed bag this year, some good, some not so good.
Give us the highlights.
Well, first off, there's been a pretty big drop in school enrollment across India. Seems like there are about 1.55 crore fewer students now than there were back in 2018-19.
Wow, that's a lot. Any idea why?
Could be a few things. Maybe families are struggling financially, so kids have to work instead of going to school.
Right, makes sense.
Plus, birth rates have been declining, so there might just be fewer kids overall.
It was a combination of factors.
Probably, yeah. It's definitely a challenge for the education system.
What about kids dropping out? Is that still a big problem?
There are some interesting patterns there. Almost no kids drop out in the early years, pre-primary to class 2,
Okay.
but the highest dropout rates are in secondary school, like classes 9 to 12.
That's when kids start thinking about getting jobs, right?
Yeah, or maybe going into vocational training.
So the pressure to contribute financially becomes stronger.
Exactly. And it seems like the biggest enrollment drops happened in states like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Maharashtra.
So there are regional differences too then.
Yeah, maybe access to good education and job opportunities isn't the same everywhere.
Right, so we've got these national trends, but also regional variations.
It's complex.
Is there anything positive in the report?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Retention rates are good, especially in elementary school.
Okay, that's good to hear.
And the gross enrollment ratio, or GER, has actually gone down a bit at most levels.
Wait, isn't a lower GER a bad thing?
No, actually. The GER compares how many kids are enrolled in school to how many kids should be enrolled based on their age.
Oh, right.
So a lower GER actually means a larger percentage of eligible kids are getting an education.
Got it. But what about the quality of that education? Does the report say anything about that?
That's a tricky one. The report gives us lots of numbers about school buildings, teacher-student ratios, that kind of thing.
But it doesn't tell us how well the kids are actually learning.
Exactly. Things like teaching quality, how relevant the curriculum is, what skills the kids are developing, those are harder to measure.
Right, just because kids are enrolled doesn't mean they're getting a good education.
That's the key question.
So the report is useful, but it doesn't give us the whole picture.
We need more research, more in-depth studies to really understand what's happening in Indian classrooms.
Okay, makes sense. So overall, we're seeing a lot of different trends happening in India. Some are positive, like those advancements in technology and exports.
Right.
But then you've got ongoing challenges, like making sure everyone has access to quality education.
And finding ways to support the agricultural sector.
It's a really fascinating mix.
India is definitely a country in transition, trying to figure out how to balance growth with sustainability.
And how to meet the needs of a young, ambitious population.
It's a story that's still being written, for sure.
And I can't wait to see what happens next. We've covered a lot of ground here, haven't we? From remittances to education, high-tech titanium, to the challenges facing agriculture.
It's been a whirlwind tour of the Indian economy.
It really has. And it all keeps coming back to this idea of India being at a crossroads, a nation in transition.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. They're dealing with so much at once,
Right.
rapid growth, but also the need for sustainability.
A young, tech-savvy population, but also these deeply rooted inequalities.
Exactly. Finding that balance, that's the key for India's long-term success, I think.
Absolutely. So how do you see all these trends playing out? What's India's economic future going to look like?
Well, there are these powerful forces converging, shaping things in a big way. You've got globalization, obviously, those massive remittances, India becoming a bigger player in global supply chains, like with the titanium production.
Right. Those are all signs of globalization,
But then there are those internal challenges, those things that need to be addressed within India itself.
like making sure everyone has access to a good education.
Yep, and finding ways to support the agricultural sector, which is still so important for so many people.
It seems like India needs to find a way to make globalization work for them while also tackling these domestic issues.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone benefits from the growth, not just a small segment of the population.
So how can India achieve that? What should they focus on?
Well, I think investing in education and skills training is absolutely crucial. They've got such a young population, so equipping them with the right skills is essential.
Right, so they can compete in the global economy.
Exactly. And encouraging innovation, supporting entrepreneurship. India's got a really vibrant startup scene, and that's something to nurture and build on.
Like with that VAR furnace technology.
Yeah,
It shows what they're capable of.
for sure. And then, of course, there's the whole issue of sustainable development. India is facing some serious environmental challenges.
Water scarcity, pollution, all that.
Yeah, finding ways to make development sustainable is non-negotiable. It has to be integrated into everything they do.
From agriculture to manufacturing, every sector.
Absolutely. It's about creating a future that's both prosperous and sustainable.
A future that works for everyone.
That's the goal. And it's not something the government can achieve on its own. It requires everyone to work together.
Businesses, civil society, individuals, everyone has a role to play.
Exactly.
Well, this deep dive has given me a lot to think about. I feel like I'm much more prepared for that meeting now.
That's what we like to hear. Just remember, India's economy is constantly changing. It's dynamic. Stay informed, keep learning, and who knows, maybe you can even be part of shaping that future we're talking about.
That's a great thought. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the Indian economy.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, keep exploring.